Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is the place where writers congregate together, and we talk about all things about writing for writers and by writers. So we're really glad you're with us today, either here live, we got a bunch of our regular crew here, or by watching the replay. So we're glad you're with us today. My name is Jean Wise. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm joined today by Johnny Alexander. Wave Johnny, and one of our other co-hosts. And I'm sure Bethany Jett will be with us shortly. She's our third co-host. And we have one of our own today as our special guest. So I'm going to turn it right over to Johnny to introduce our topic and our guest today. So go ahead, Johnny.
Hey, everyone. I am so excited to be able to introduce Tina Yeager to you. I met Tina at the Florida Christian Writers Conference, I believe in February 2016, so just 4 years ago. And I was having a little bit of a problem with a character who had a mild eating disorder. And finding out that Tina was a licensed mental health counselor and she had taught a workshop kind of talking about the psychology of characters, I made an appointment to visit with her. And we talked about my character and some of her issues. And then later, Tina was kind enough to read different scenes of the manuscript and help me tweak some things that I didn't have quite right that would make that character more realistic. So we're really glad to have Tina. I am going to give her official bio as well. She's a wife, mom, and latte junkie. She loves to bring encouraging messages through spoken and written words. She's an award-winning author, inspirational speaker, and mentor with Word Weavers International. Licensed as a counselor, she provides online life coaching through Divine Encouragement, LLC, and my favorite part, offers character therapy for authors. And does a great job. Her psychological manuscript reviews optimize depth, authenticity, and impact to audiences. Great news. Elk Lake Publishing will soon launch her YA Supernatural Suspense series with Inscaping. Is that the title of the series or the first book?
That's the first book.
The first book, Inscaping. So you can contact Tina for insider opportunities as a launch party member for that series and for Elk Lake's publication announcement at elklakepublishing.com. And you can also connect with Tina and for a virtual cup of Java at divineencouragement.com and tyeagerwrites.com. So we're so excited to have Tina and she's here today to talk about creativity and brain health. Wonderful topic. So Tina, what have you got for us?
Well, first of all, I want to encourage you that you guys as creatives are probably more likely to be healthy in your brain. That's an exciting thing. Actually, art has been proven by a lot of science and research to really help us be healthier emotionally and physically. It's amazing how all of that kind of works together. They've used art in all kinds of art therapies, music therapy, visual art therapy, and actually written and spoken words would be very healing, they found, for cancer patients, for mental health issues, and for all kinds of things that you might not even recognize. So creativity is actually good for your brain health. And whereas we used to think creativity was only in one side of the brain, the right side of the brain, is actually a whole brain process.
Really?
And the reason they think Einstein was a genius was because he used all the parts of his brain. So we can benefit as creatives by learning how to use all the parts of our brain rather than just thinking we only use one part of the brain. And that can be a way that we can help recharge our creativity. So I'm interested to see what kind of questions you might have about creativity and brain health.
I'm fascinated that it's the whole brain activity. I wanted to learn more about that. But Johnny, what were you going to say?
Well, kind of the same thing. I was doing a little bit of research on this too, and they were talking about. I even printed it out because it was kind of interesting. Let me find that sheet real quick. It was talking about studying jazz musicians. I thought I did, maybe I didn't. And just because jazz musicians are very famous for just going off on these riffs and improvisation. And so they had studied their brains with scans, and then both when they were doing what they were supposed to be doing and then when they improvised, and just different parts of the brain lighting up at different times, but then again saying it's actually the whole brain, and it just depends on what we're doing, where we are in that creative process. So is that
Yes,
right?
absolutely. We have an implicit process and an explicit process. And the difference is your implicit part of your brain is that unconscious part of the brain where you're in your flow state. And that's when people are doing the NaNoWriMo. They're just writing stream of consciousness almost, trying to get it down. And sometimes when you're writing poetry, that's how you're writing. When you first draft a poem, you're letting yourself just kind of flow. You're not thinking about it too much. The frontal cortex of the brain, where your higher functioning processes are, that's more of your explicit system, and it requires a lot of energy, so you can't use that all the time. You need to learn to use both the explicit and the implicit, and when you're doing both of those and balancing them out, that's when you start to build those neural connections. The healthiest brains are the ones that have the most activity in the corpus callosum, that center part of the brain where you're connecting all the pieces of the brain together. The more neural pathways that you build to make that part stronger and fill, the more you use it, the more it fills with neural connections. So you can actually make your brain stronger, healthier, and grow by the things that you choose to do. And that's when you begin to develop genius, like Einstein. Bipedal activities involved with also using your explicit and implicit brain functionings. Say you're going for a walk. Bipedal activities would be walking or bicycling or running. So when you're walking and exercising and you're praying and you're thinking and you're reflecting on God's beauty, you're doing all of those things at the same time. So those are really good for us as writers to get out and take a walk, to dream while you're bicycling, not too much, not with your eyes closed because you wreck, but obviously you want to actually do some exercise to actually build your brain. It's good for your brain. It's good for the serotonin levels. We need to eventually get out of the cave and get out of the chair. I know we want to say button chair all the time, but you can't do that all the time because you need to be inspired, and we need to refresh our creativity. So
back a little again, because that was a whole bunch of great stuff. But what exactly do you mean when you say explicit and implicit? What's the difference between those two things?
I would say it's more of like your conscious process and your less conscious process, where you're really focused and thinking, and when you're not really as concentrated. The difference between composing and editing probably would be a good way of thinking about that as a writer.
And somebody even asked that in the chat. Does this correlate at all with the difference between writing first drafts and editing?
Yes.
And also, is there a difference between writing fiction and nonfiction? That's a great question. Is there?
I'm not sure if it's too much of a difference between nonfiction and fiction. You probably use more of your explicit brain in nonfiction, but you should also be using fiction techniques when you write nonfiction. Yeah. So there should be some poetic use of language there. There should be some creativity. When you're building your nonfiction process, you should be daydreaming. You should be creating. You should be looking at art. You should be delving into the things that are involved in meditation and prayer and developing those concepts that are spiritual, that are healing. All those things that you want to do in your nonfiction book need some of that implicit process involved as well.
Yeah, it reminds me kind of the artist dates Julia Cameron's pushed that writers need to take, or all artists need to go to an artist date. I think she recommends weekly.
Yes.
For that kind of inspiration. And the other thing this kind of reminds me of, that coming from a medical field, it is always fascinated me the amount of nurses that I find that are writers, for example, and physicians that I find are musicians, that they're part of rock bands sometimes, and you would never think, but they find it, one is a form of stress balance, but I think it's part of this creativity, how this pulls us both right and left brain together. We did have a question earlier too, and does this have any aspect if you're right-handed or left-handed or both? Did you read any correlation on that?
I think they kind of have debunked that you can be more creative or less creative by being right-handed or left-handed, because we're still going to use both sides of our brain for different activities.
But people that can use both hands, do you know, was there any correlation? Did you find any correlation between them being more creative or?
Not necessarily, but I do think I have seen some things in the research that I was doing that suggested you should use both sides of your body. Like some people would say you would breathe differently to kind of engage that other side of the brain, or you might actually squeeze an opposite earlobe or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how much that really does. But if you're doing bipedal activities, you're engaging both sides of your body and both sides of your brain. So you can do that whether you're writing with your left hand or not. That may or may not for you be helpful. It might be more frustrating than helpful because you may be trying to use too much conscious effort rather than just letting things flow. So I'm not sure if that's necessary to try to use one or the other hand. You can do lots of other things. I mean, if you want to do it that way, that's fine, but you don't have to do it that way, I guess is what I'm saying. There's a lot of other options out there.
I read that too, to try to like eat with your opposite hand or brush your teeth with your opposite hand. Just
brush teeth.
Yeah, just to get something else going up there.
Yeah.
Well, I love the idea that we have healthy brains if we're creative. I think that's really cool.
Yes.
I like that.
Makes you feel better. Yeah.
Yes. I even have this one thing that it says that an interest in art leads to a higher state of motivation, improved performance, training of attention, and improvement in other parts of your brain. So just being interested in art is healthy for your brain.
So you mean like curiosity, just reading about art or maybe learning about an artist that you never knew before? Is that what you're saying? Or
I think you have to actually be engaged in appreciating the beauty of the art, because most of the other research said that being awestruck actually helps heal. In fact, I read some research that said if you are awestruck with the beauty of art, you are likely to decrease, let me find the actual thing, you're decreasing an element that creates inflammation in the body. And if you think about inflammation as being the thing that causes arthritis, the thing that causes skin irritation, and all kinds of other chronic illnesses that we can think of, inflammation is not good. So if we can decrease inflammation by being awestruck by art and also God's art, I think creativity is hardwired into us. And there was a quote by Charles Limb that artistic creativity is a hardwired, deep-seated trait necessary for human survival. Necessary for human survival. In order to have survived just on this earth, we need to be creative. Creativity is part of science. It's part of math. It's part of building. It's part of all forms of production. Human productivity, in order to be effective as human beings, we need to know how to be creative. My great uncle was a farmer, and he learned how to take all kinds of bits and pieces of metal things and leftover parts and make things out of those. And that's creativity. It's being able to use what you have to build something new. And that helped him to be able to survive the Great Depression, because he was able to build something that he marketed to the local farmers that saved them from having their sows roll over on their pigs and kill them.
Wow.
So he built this and invented it, and that helped him survive the Great Depression and his neighbors too. So creativity is a part of all kinds of things, and learning to engage that creativity in our brain can help us be effective in relationships. It helps us navigate crises. It helps us in problem solving. It's a very whole brain, whole life process.
That is amazing. I have a friend who has written several books and finally wrote that kind of passion book, that one deep, where she really shared her story, and she cried all the way through that book and was so burned out afterwards. After she got that book out and published, she found peace in learning how to be, it was actually artwork, actually lettering. On that, learning to both on the computer and in using the brushes. And she said, art saved her. She'll tell you. She said art saved her after that, and kind of found her balance again, which is sort of what I think what you're saying.
Yeah. I think for us as creatives, we need to find another form of art besides words, because we overthink our words to help refresh our creativity, whether it's a craft or whether it's just it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be saleable art, but it's just something that is therapeutic for us emotionally to rebuild. And Bethany says coloring. Coloring is a great way to do that because you don't have to overthink it. I like to paint because you can fix it. You can always paint over paint. And I love the flow of the paint. It's just very organic. And I'm not an artist, but I love the things that I make because they're special to me. And sometimes I will make things that are spiritual to me because I think creativity comes from us spiritually as being created in the image of God. More of us are creative than we give ourselves credit for. Some people are creative in cooking. Some people are creative in poetry. Some people are creative in art. There's a lot of different ways, even gardening. There's a lot of different ways of being creative. And I used to recommend to my clients when I was doing private practice counseling to find a creative outlet because it recharges us and it connects us with who we are spiritually as children of God. I think that's very important. And I think, too, as creatives, we need to get out in creation and admire and be inspired by the original creator and what he has for us. So,
yeah. I love people are putting in the chat different things. So we've got coloring, we've got knitting. I think I saw gardening somewhere. Maybe not. Maybe I just dreamed that one. Playing the piano, collecting glass on the beach. I mean, all those are great, great things to be doing. I would like to do art, but I cannot even hard to draw a stick figure. So some of the things I was reading, preparing for this, I love what this guy said. He said, create junk. He said, give yourself permission to create junk. I thought, okay, I can go along with that. That sounds good. Yeah.
I'm going to write that one down.
Junk,
creativity can be a form of worship. We can create, like a child creating a doodle for their dad or their mom. We can create our little handprint art that's for nobody else but for our Papa Daddy in heaven. And it's just our way of connecting with him and saying, I'm worshiping you. There's somebody at my church who is an artist and she's actually good at it. But instead of taking notes during Bible study, she will draw and she will paint and she'll make these beautiful pieces of art while she's sitting there listening to us teach in Bible study. And that's her form of worship, her form of ingesting what's going on. And we can doodle, we can do all kinds of things, but that is creativity and it's engaging our bodies and our minds at the same time.
Yeah. And Vicky's made a point that, we don't always allow ourselves the time to do that. We don't make that a priority, and part is our self-care. And it sounds like you're really inspiring us to make this a priority for healthy brains, right?
Yes. You've got to allow yourself permission, again, not just to create junk, but to say it's okay for me to take this hour and go do something besides writing or, household stuff or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And if you don't schedule it, it doesn't get done. Exactly. So it's important to schedule those self-care things into your week. And the thing, you've probably all heard that story about the lumberjacks, where one would continually, they were in a contest who could chop the tree down first, and one just kept chopping away. And the other one, every hour, he would take a few minutes to sharpen his axe. Well, the one who took the few minutes every hour to sharpen his axe won the lumberjack contest, because he took the time to sharpen his axe. The other one just dulled his axe. And we need to, as creatives, sharpen our brains, which is our tool for blessing the world with what God has given us. And if we don't sharpen our creativity tools by taking those self-care moments, it's really, in the long range is not that much time. We're sharpening our tools by immersing ourselves in meditation exercises and admiring God's creation and connecting with him creatively.
That is fascinating. Your story about the lady at church reminded me when we were in the Holy Lands. I had my journal with me all the time, writing different things down. And there was one of the ladies on the pilgrimage that drew pictures of all the places. So I'd always try to position myself by her because I love to watch her process. And she drew beautiful pictures of every spot that we were at, and it was a wonderful way of capturing the moment where I'm too busy looking at my camera, taking pictures and writing the words down. I think sometimes I missed the beauty that she was seeing. So you're so right on that.
let's talk a little bit more about prayer, because I'm glad that you brought that up. It was another thing that I sort of came across too, prayer as part of the whole creative process. And that there is actually now a new scientific field called neurotheology, because of all the evidence that, okay, here's just what it says. The connection between, okay, let me change this. Prayer may change 4 areas of the brain: the frontal lobe, the anterior cingulate, oh my gosh, I shouldn't even have tried to start pronouncing these. The parietal lobe, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And the limbic system. They, again, what you're talking about, just being healthier, because, okay, here it goes. I found it. MRI scans have shown that people who valued their religion more and regularly prayed had thicker brain cortices compared to those who did not, which means you are less likely to suffer from depression.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of healing power, and science is just catching up with what Scripture already knew, already had told us. So it's amazing how we can look at these things that are in Scripture throughout, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and eventually science will catch up and find out how true that is.
It's true.
And I've always said, it's coming from a science background, I have no problem with my theology matching science. It's, God created science, and it's all this stuff fits under him.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get lost and bogged down with all the minute details of arguing one side to the other, yes, God would use our brains the way that he created them to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that, what was it called again?
Neurotheology.
Neurotheology. Wow.
I love too that we can just sort of do all this together. I mean, you can take a walk, so you're doing the bipedal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Be awestruck, be daydreaming, be praying, just be active, letting your mind just sort of drift. I mean, we can get a lot of benefit just from a walk, right? Just a walk out in nature. I try to do, when I walk, I don't use headphones. I don't listen to music or listen to anything, because I want to be able to be in tune with whatever I hear, and not be distracted by whatever else. I know a lot of people like to listen to books, and that's great too. But try to do it without. Leave your headphones at home and your earbuds at home. Yeah. Hear God's music.
I love it. And so I'm fascinated, Tina, back to your conversation about the actual brain and the structure of the brain, and how Einstein used, how'd you say that? He used his middle parts?
He used all the sides of his brain, and so that strengthened the connective tissue, the corpus callosum, that goes in between all the hemispheres of the brain. So when you're thinking about the right brain and the left brain, in the cortexes of the brain, the top part of the brain, which is the higher functioning area of the brain, the central part of the brain between those is called the corpus callosum. And when you use both sides, you're creating pathways. And you're strengthening all the neural connections and creating more neurons in there, because you're using it more. You're using that, the connections are created. We can actually change the structure, and not the whole structure, but we can change how healthy the corpus callosum is and how thick it is by how we use it. The brain is very plastic, and it changes by what we do with it. In fact, exercise can sometimes change the neurochemistry of the brain. It does change the neurochemistry of the brain, but sometimes it changes it enough that you won't need the antidepressants or the anti-anxiety medications that you would need, because you're affecting the brain chemistry in such a way that you're healthy enough without it. Now, that isn't always the case. I mean, sometimes people will still need medication, but it actually helps a lot more than just medication by itself, even if you do need the medication.
It strikes me as somebody that, that has had a brain injury of some sort too, how over time we can, even if they had a brain injury, say to the right side of the brain one place, how over time why we start seeing them compensate with the healing process and stuff. And that's probably part of the process going on, isn't it?
Yes. And they use art therapies for those kinds of things too, to help them to heal.
Uh-huh.
Healing emotionally is very, very important to use art therapies for emotional healing.
Wow. Wow. And Vicki made the comment about the more you use the same patterns, the muscle memory sticks.
Yes.
And it almost like the brain is a muscle in some ways, it sounds like, with the muscle memory idea there. Did you
Well,
know
that's where memory is.
Yeah.
So if anything's going to have a memory of how you use things, then it would definitely be how you use your brain.
Wow. Wow. Is that also, do you find out, or have you, in your practice, have you seen anything with this as a preventative tool? For example, if we would, as creative artists, become like Einstein with this connection, and something would happen like a stroke, do those people recover quicker because they come from an artistic, I don't know, is there correlation?
I didn't find anything, but I would imagine that however healthy you are before an injury always seems to have an effect on how well you recover from that injury. So it would make sense that they would have a better chance of recovery. But I don't have any specific research cited on that. So
Wow. I think
that
this
would be
is
interesting
exciting.
to find out.
Yeah, it's exciting and it's motivating. It's not. It tells me that this artist date or this looking out the window or going for the walk isn't just a nice thing to do for my body. It's actually, like you said, it implies.
It's all, yeah, it's all encompassing. I mean, spiritual, emotional, physical, mental.
Yeah.
But we are whole people and we're writing to whole people. So the more that we engage with the creativity of the world as God created it and all of the different elements of artistry that we have access to, the better we're going to be able to connect to the people we're writing for, our audiences.
Did they find any particular kinds of art worked quicker? I always want the quick answer. Work quicker.
To do what?
Well,
Quicker,
quick is the way to look at art because the process is what is healing, not the result.
Okay.
So I think that it depends on the person what kind of art you need. You need a type of art that for you as an individual is going to get you out of that frontal cortex gunk that's going to keep you too focused and help you engage the limbic systems of the brain and get in that flow state of your implicit brain system. So for some people that may be drawing, it may be painting. For other people it might be clay and sculpting or cooking, or it may be just going out and enjoying nature and singing. Because music therapy is very important. That can actually do a lot to help improve memory, if you're talking about memory. And they've done a lot of research on that. When I was pregnant with my youngest child, I read a book on how to have a smarter baby, and it suggested playing Mozart was one of the things that it suggested. And I did all those things that you were supposed to do, and he's an aerospace engineering honors student now. So, and even though he's very scientifically and math oriented, he also writes. And he taught himself to play guitar. So he uses both sides of his brain. And I think that contributes to his intelligence level and his creativity and the things that he's able to do too. So
I'd like to challenge all of us to do something that we're not good at, just naturally good at. Like I know Vicki is a very talented musician. So she has that, kind of innate talent that she was born with. So I'd say, Vicki, go do something else. And like, I'm not musically inclined nor artistically inclined. In fact, I love, we talk about creatives and it's taken me a long time to even think of myself being in that category of being a creative, because it's like, I don't have those talents. I can write, but that's like it. So, it's nice to feel like, what, that still counts, it's yes, I am in this creative world, and I love that. But yeah, if we could all just sort of do something that we're not naturally good at, again, giving ourselves permission just to make a mess of it, and see what happens, and just enjoy the process, enjoy the doing of it. Who's with me?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I taught when I was teaching couples therapy or in family therapy is relationships are based on play. So as creatives, we should be playing not always working, because our creativity is part of our relationship to God. So as we play with him, as we engage with him in that play process, we can relate to him intimately and make that part of our play, not our work, and not see it as work. So I think that's kind of important. And I think it's also a God identity issue. I am not naturally going to be creative by myself, even in the things that I would say I'm good at. I'm not good at them without God's help. I couldn't write anything worth reading if it wasn't for his help. You know, I need his Holy Spirit breath in me to make anything good appear on a page. And so by doing some of those things that I don't do all the time, it helps me feel more of that dependence on him, because I'm outside of that normal, this is what I always do, this is what I always do. And I can't do this as well, but I'm going to play with God, and he's going to help me make something fun, even if it's not something beautiful.
I love that.
I love that. Play with God.
I like that. And playing with the messes. I think Vicki put something about messes and stuff. But, you know, I'm fascinated, Johnny, with your challenge, because we are coming up to the end of the year, and people will be thinking, or should be thinking, about goals for next year. And I think that would be to become, I wrote that down, to challenge myself to try something that I'm not good at, you know, artistic wise, you know. On that.
I'll confess, I bought an Irish whistle like months ago, and I haven't even gotten it out of its out of its box. But it's in my drawer at home, and it's like, because I wanted to practice music, and I thought, oh, this might be an easy, and it was inexpensive way to do it. So I'm going to say it right here on Writer's Chat. That's going to be my thing. When I get back home, I'm going to get that thing out.
And what is it again? What is it?
It's called an Irish whistle. So it's about like this long. It looks like a little flute kind of thing, you know. So.
Oh, one day can you share with us in the after party?
I think they're home, and I'm not at home, so I'll have to do that.
Okay.
When I get back home.
That would be fun.
There you go. There you go. Or don't wait that long. Try something else, and then bring that too.
Yeah.
And stuff. Well, you know, we had that a writer's chat a couple weeks ago on Skillshare, and I got on the Skillshare thing, and the ones I keep going to are all the art ones, making the calligraphy, or the cheating way to make calligraphy. I've always liked calligraphy, and I keep thinking, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. So that may be my challenge. I may just take the Skillshare class, and do learn a little bit of the fancy writing and stuff. You know, I think that would be great and stuff. We've had some comments in the chat, so I want to go back up and find the one I was looking for.
Playing video games.
Rebecca, what Rebecca shared with us, and I love this, that there's a YouTube video of an elderly lady in a nursing home who can't remember simple questions, and then they give her earbuds and have her listen to an old song from her youth. They repeat the questions, and she answers them. And how that connected and made her brain work. I just think that's fancy. And Rebecca, thanks. She does give us the link to that video. If you scroll down just a little bit after that, there's a YouTube video on that. And I love Vicki's comment about making messes is incredibly important, because you learn from every mess. Boy, that's got a spiritual lesson.
That was good. That's powerful.
Thanks, Vicki. Powerful. And it makes you feel more comfortable and accepting, especially in line with what you said, Tina, about that, you know. And then they went off on a little bit of Sophia shared about her husband, a programmer, likes to play StarCraft, a video game, to help keep himself sharp. So, and then don't want to tell our kids that playing video games.
Right. I mean, there's a balance with video games, because too much video games can actually cause depression. So make sure you don't overdo the video games, because I have had to work with some people that, because it trains your brain to do only passive activity and engagement, it actually, it's that quick, it gives you this quick serotonin response, and you can become addicted to it. A lot of the electronic activities that we do all the time online, not just video games, but online shopping, social media, it gives you that quick response, and you get that quick serotonin boost. So it can actually cause depression if you become dependent on it. Like anything, it can become addictive. So you need to balance that. It's not that it's bad in and of itself, but you need to make sure that you balance by going outside and doing some other things with your brain, and getting some different ways of feeding the serotonin with exercise and stuff like that. So in moderation, it's okay. It's
in
just,
moderation and stuff. And
overdo that.
it goes back to kind of what you said earlier. As writers, don't always play with just words. That would be imbalance.
Right.
Find a way to seek that balance and stuff like that. Jan shared about our lives look like a messy underside of tapestry. There's that beautiful poem about God's tapestry, and that is that one.
That's a Corrie ten Boom illustration that she used to use.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It's a beautiful illustration. So Jan, thank you for bringing that up and stuff. And he does. There's power to our messes, when we use them. On that,
and we need to be joyful as Christians. We need to learn to have fun. And I know I have a hard time with that too, giving myself permission to just have fun. I think that's important, because if we're going to share the joy of the Lord, we need to experience the joy of the Lord a little bit more often.
I think so too. I think that is great and stuff. So I'm inspired for brain health today. Yeah. Johnny, you did some other research. Did you find any other?
Just a couple other things that I'd like to share. We talked just briefly about curiosity. Tina mentioned that early on, and just how important it is to make sure you develop your curiosity and you keep that as something as a trait that you have. And then some ways to stimulate creativity. And we've sort of touched on some of these, but I just want to make sure we get the point. One is to cultivate active awareness. So like when you're taking a walk, pay special attention to what you see and you hear. And then when you get to the end of your walk, try to remember the associations that you made and the impressions that you had, and see if any of those trigger a unique association or image. And very similar to that is to enhance your sensual awareness. So like if you're having, this is the example they give, if you're chatting with someone, of course you're going to listen to what they're saying, but also try to observe the color. And I think maybe this really hits me as a novelist, but it's like pay attention to hair color, eye color, body movements, what's going on in the background, and then also try new things. Deal with like new foods, an art exhibit, a genre of music that you usually don't listen to, a new style of clothing, just something new to do with your senses. So
that's very good. And the other thing I wanted to say too is that story and music and art speaks to the unconscious processes of our mind. So it goes past all the things that we would get in like direct teaching, and it helps us absorb and internalize information better. So it's almost like our spiritual language is through that creative arts. God speaking to us through creation, God speaking to us through his creativity, through his voice, his music. It speaks directly to our spiritual side of who we are. So I think that's very important spiritually, cognitively, and that's precisely why music and story will speak to someone who has memory issues, because it connects deep down into that memory part, that unconscious part of who we are, and can bring back all those memories.
Wow.
So,
did you read much, Tina, on curiosity, how that plays into brain health?
I didn't get into the curiosity piece of that, other than just noting that people who were engaged in the arts tended to be more inspired and have more attention span and better memory.
Okay.
So,
a couple people in the chat, I think they kind of added a jokingly about how napping helps them, but we've talked about the importance of sleep and stuff.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. You've got to take care of your brain by sleeping. That's when your body and your brain regenerates. I think I mentioned in somebody else's chat that if I hear another writer say, I'll sleep when I'm dead, I just want to welcome, because, you will eventually hurry yourself along toward that end if you don't get enough sleep. So it's very important to our health.
Wow.
Bethany wants to know about reading. Is reading counting? Does reading count as being creative?
I think reading is kind of a passive way of doing it, and it sort of depends on how you're reading. If you're reading in such a way that you can really enjoy and drink in the art of the writing, rather than reading it as research or reading it as this is how I need to write better, which is what we often tend to do as writers, then maybe reading will count, but just don't make that the only creative activity that you do, because you do need to get out of that business of words occasionally to do some other parts of your brain.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to be my biggest lesson from today, because I have a tendency to stay with words
Mhm.
all the time on
yes,
that.
she has permission to read and color in the same day.
Yes.
and
Yes.
eat and nap. And people are talking about the beach. I
Mhm.
love the beach, but I think I prefer mountains and just hills and trees and that kind of thing. So I think just being out and green. I think we need the color green in our lives, and people that don't have the color green naturally,
Mhm.
they hurt from that. I've thought that for a very long time.
I don't see any green up here in Northwest Ohio right now.
And I
Let me tell
feel
you.
for you, Jeannie. I just
I
feel
do
like
see
need
blue
house
skies today. I do, yeah, I do. I don't see much of green outside. I do see blue sky today, though.
good.
And some
That's
the
good.
leaves are about gone up here.
I need to get some more house plants for my office area so that I have a little bit of green. I already killed the ones I had because I tend to be a brown thumb, but I just get new ones, and, equal opportunity
Why not?
herbicidal maniac. So I'll just
Yeah.
get like different house plants from
Yeah.
time to time and put some green in my space.
Yeah, Cheryl Lynn mentioned taking an online course, and
Mhm.
I think that would be good. Unless it's for me, it might be more words again. That maybe it like you said, the online course on something art-wise, I think probably be healthier for me than something else. But I still think that that curiosity and always wanting to learn something new is healthy. Is a healthy thing for us.
Too. I like
Learning something new is healthy for your brain.
Yeah.
People that age well are people that tend to continue learning. So learning is actually a very important part of that cognitive health process.
Yeah, on the
And
Vicky
traveling.
yellow
Talk about
sunshine.
traveling. Yes.
I'm sorry, Johnny. What?
Traveling. We should talk. Traveling is a great
Yeah.
way. Jeannie's a traveler. I love to travel. It's just, getting in someplace new, seeing how the world works in a different ways and different places.
And think about all the ways that you're enriching your toolkit for
Yes.
what you have to write about now. Now that you've been on that wonderful trip, the sensory experiences of it, taking the time to pay attention to how wonderful a real croissant tastes. That could be part of your novel. And you wouldn't experience that if you stayed at home and only worked and only worked and only worked. You don't get that real rich sensory experience to work from.
Yeah. And do you want to share Bethany's joke, Johnny? Did you see what Bethany?
I didn't. Oh, I'll sprinkle green Legos around your apartment, Mom.
I love that.
She does have a key to my apartment, so it's like.
Look out! You might see that.
I'll be back on Thursday. I'm leaving tomorrow. Travel prayers, real quick. So here's a little commercial. Travel prayers for Johnny. I'm driving home tomorrow and Thursday. So
okay.
Yeah, we can get back to Writer's Chat now. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry for those on the replay. It's a little commercial.
You better get over there pretty quick then, Bethany, and get that done. and that. Rebecca's brought up a very good question, and maybe Tina, maybe you can give us some wisdom on that about the power of having a purpose, how that might lead into our brain health, and how people in nursing homes lose cognitive abilities because they feel unneeded on that. What do you think?
I think that's true. I think we always need to have a why. Michael Hyatt talks about that a lot. Where's your why? People lose their way when they lose their why. And we always need to have a why to live for. And I think part of our why, our why is part of our who we live for as well. So connected with, we are doing this for who? God. And that is, he gives us a specific individual why. And our why can shift and morph from season to season. The who will always be the same. So.
Yeah, you're right. That's part of our vision.
Yeah, it's hard to stay motivated in this business. I think art is one of the most discouraging and difficult businesses to live in. And I think maintaining a sense of enjoyment in it and a sense of purpose in it is extremely important and vital. And that's why we need each other. And I love that you're doing Writer's Chat because we need community. Yeah.
That's the community on that. And I think I've shared this story before about how I asked a friend of mine who is a nun what that I said I either see nuns in nursing homes just sitting in a wheelchair, crippled up, and saying the rosary, or they're out working. And I said, do nuns ever retire? And she said, no. As we grow older, we just get a new ministry. And that always struck me. You know, they're why they continue to serve God through new areas, new ministries. And I really think that's a secret of probably brain health for a lot of them, you know, that they know who they're serving and why, you know, and that is part of keeping our brains healthy on that way and stuff. Johnny, anything else, or do we want to invite people back on?
You know what? I've just got one more little thing to talk about. I went to see Goodbye Christopher Robin, the movie.
Oh.
Saturday. And it was fascinating and sad. And fortunately, I did have a little redemptive arc at the end, because I was thinking I'm never going to be able to like Winnie the Pooh again after watching the movie. But seeing how A.A. Milne, he was trying to write one thing about war and peace and those kinds of things after just having come out of World War I and sort of having PTSD experiences from that.
Mm-hmm.
And what brought him out of that and helped him create Winnie the Pooh was taking walks in the woods with his son, Christopher Robin.
Wow.
And it wasn't just him coming up with the story. It was such a collaborative effort between this engagement and even things his wife would say. And so it was fascinating. So just even from an author's viewpoint, it was fascinating to see how that creativity all came together. But there were ramifications from that, especially for Christopher Robin, that were very sad. And then the previews, they showed a movie coming out. I think it's called The Man Who Invented Christmas. I'm not sure that's the title, but it's about Charles Dickens trying to write the Christmas Carol.
Really?
And it is amazing. It looks amazing. Dan Stevens, who played Matthew on Downton Abbey, plays Dickens. And at one point he says, when you get the character's name right, he will come, he will appear. And so he's just going through all these different names, and then he says Scrooge, and then there's Scrooge, and it's the guy that plays Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek plays Scrooge. And he's there, and then there's a knock on the door, he's interrupted, and Scrooge disappears. I mean, haven't we all had those moments where we're just like here, and then boom, and it's gone. So it just looked fascinating. So I recommend when it comes out, trying to see that. If you get a chance, see Goodbye Christopher Robin. You might want to take a Kleenex. Maybe not. Now that I said that, you're prepared for it. It might not be so bad, but yeah.
Wow. So we have artist dates to plan.
We
to see movies on that way. Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, why don't you guys come on back in if you want to, and see if we have comments or questions. Come on back in. And if you have trouble coming back in, just drop me a note.
What are you going to do that you're not already good at?
That's great.
Yeah. I want to know.
I'm going to try some calligraphy.
Good for you.
Are you going to try calligraphy?
I'm going to try calligraphy and some cartooning. I'm going to have my son stop at the library today and pick up some books.
Yay!
Fun.
Yay! We should have a writer's chat in the future where people just show and tell.
I'll write that down as an idea. I had an idea earlier. Okay.
We can use our art things as part of our book promotions and ways to decorate our office and keep us inspired. I mean, there's lots of things we can do with the art we make if we want to keep it, but we don't have to keep it. It can just be play.
Okay, Sophia, I'm going to try to help you out here. Okay, get Sophia back on that. See if we get her back on. Everybody else, there you go. And Robin's back with us. Deborah, are you on Skillshare at all? I can't remember. I know we connected on Author Audit Academy.
I don't have a subscription to Skillshare, but I'm busy creating a course for Skillshare. But my budget doesn't. My budget doesn't hold.
Yeah, you might get a free couple months if you create something for Skillshare, and then you might go on there for some calligraphy.
Yeah.
You're having trouble. Robin's having trouble. I'll work on Robin. Okay.
Okay.
Jan, you're in now. Yeah. Robin, I can't. Okay, Robin, I can't see you. So let me work. I'll work on Robin. You guys talk.
Does anyone else have any questions or anything about creativity, brain health, things that they do or would like to do?
I'm doing one thing that I really wanted to do, and I was scared to death to do, but I decided to do it anyway because I really want to learn about writing. I know we're supposed to be creative, but I found, well, Kyle kind of gave me a really creative way to learn about writing, and that is to interview writers.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm learning how to do that, and I'm having a blast. But I really would like a lot of prayer because I get to interview one of my favorite writers tonight, and that's Stephen James.
Ooh, I love Stephen James.
So, I mean, my book is kind of like his, but he kind of goes right up to the edge before he pushes you over. I'm about a foot away from the edge when it comes to the, you know, the graphics and all the graphicness and stuff like that. But yeah, I just love his writing, and I just finished listening. I like to listen to books. That's one of the ways that I get creative. I don't listen to see how it's written. I just listen to it. And I love to do that too. But please pray. I mean, I'm very, very excited. Extremely excited. And I wanted to, who is the girl on here that does ghostwriting? I was going to interview her.
I think you're talking about Gail, and she's not been in for the last couple of weeks, so we'll get connected with her.
Gail, because I'd like to get a hold of her because I have another guy who does ghostwriting, bestseller guy, who said he would do an interview. I haven't told him what it's about yet. So if she doesn't want to do the ghostwriting, I'm going to ask him to do it. But I told her first, so I'd love her to do it.
Okay.
I want to share the scripture that made me think of when you were talking about the elderly. It's Psalm 92, and it always sticks with me, and I love this psalm. It says, they will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright. He is my rock. And so I love that concept of, you know, this can take a long time before we can write forever. We can write to the ends of our days, but staying fresh and green, planted in the house of the Lord can still use us no matter how old it seems we're getting or how long it seems we're taking. I love that. I love God's promises for us.
That's great. And there's that color green for Johnny too.
Yeah. My favorite.
That is great. Deborah shared her book in the chat, so I want to be sure everybody says about how the brain, making your mind magnificent. I'm not familiar with that one. Stephen Campbell, huh? Do you know what fiction or not? Is nonfiction?
Oh, it's nonfiction, and I'm currently editing his second book, which is the same material, but from a Christian perspective. And I was really amazed. I read through the first book, and he talks about how, you know, the brain forms memories and makes connections, and how we can develop our brain and you know, call forth. It's like, it's the biblical principle of calling forth what isn't and calling it forth. He shows how you can do that. So, I mean, it's really an amazing book. And the second one is even better because he's talking about how we defeat sin and such. So,
That sounds good.
It's available on Amazon, so you could always preview it and see if it would be something of interest. But
What's the title again?
Making Your Mind Magnificent, I believe.
That sounds exciting.
So, yeah.
There's a book too on the spiritual side of it called The Art of the Soul by Erwin McManus. It's also really good. It talks about that spiritual thing of us as creatives that I really have liked. We did it for our church's book club this summer, and it's really inspiring. It's beautiful lyrical prose, and I always love that. So,
and say the title one more time.
The Art of the Soul.
Ooh.
Wow. I can get it from my bookshelf behind me. You want me to get up and get it?
It's one of those keepers.
Yes.
To put on your bookshelf. Good stuff. Anybody else going to take up Johnny's challenge?
Yes. What's
I can show you
Johnny's
the stuff
challenge?
that's
I
in my
missed
office
it.
right now that I did. That was.
What was your challenge? I missed it because I missed half of the.
Hold on a second. Let's look at, look what Tina did.
Yeah, I decorated my office. I made these things. I put F is for failure.
Wow.
Failure. That's my reminder, because my big problem is always thinking of failure.
Oh,
So
that's
I put that on my wall to
beautiful.
remind me that it's not about that, and to remind myself to dream and
Oh, I love it. That's
just some
beautiful.
fun things. Yeah.
Beautiful.
You could just go spend a day in Michael's and get inspired. There's all kinds of projects that you can do that aren't that hard and don't require a lot of talent. They're just fun. So
That's
The challenge
inspirational.
is to do something that you're not good at. So Vicky can't go do music. She's got to do something else.
That's why I'm writing now.
Okay, no writing. It can't be writing either. It's got to be something else. Even if it's playing with Play-Doh, just some other thing. And then
I made some jewelry. Jewelry's fun. That's a fun
Yeah.
thing to do.
I've done latch hook rugs, and they're just like flat. I don't do anything with them, but it's something good to do while you're watching TV,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you're still creating something. I took a week.
And you're using both hands.
Yeah.
You're- yeah.
Well, I love Tina's challenge to go to Michael's. My thought is if I'm going to get lost in a store, it's Barnes and Noble, and that's more words
Yes.
again. So
Go to Michael's. Or
better go
Robbie-
to Michael's or Joanne Fabric or one of those Hobby Lobby or one of those fun stores that way and find something. I think that's going to be my challenge.
Or go to Home Depot or Lowe's.
Menards up here, yeah.
Get some
Menards.
wood and some nails and a hammer.
This time of year, we can decorate for Christmas. I mean, that can be part of your creative outlet as well,
Right.
or something for your front door. I mean, it's a great time of year to do something different.
That's
Yeah.
That's
It
true.
is.
I love making Christmas wreaths. I go to one of the places and get a halfway decent looking wreath, maybe even stop and shop at the grocery store and get a regular wreath. And then I go to the Dollar Tree or whatever, the dollar store, whatever, and they have those little either birds or decorations. I've made some really pretty wreaths. Oh, this was like 5 or 6 years ago. By doing that, and people are like, where did you get that? I said, I made it, but it was so easy. You got a hot glue gun, you put them on there, and you're like, wow, I did that, and it doesn't take that long either. They make great presents too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. And we didn't talk about photography at all.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And you
Yeah.
could definitely use that for writing for your social media posts, and there's all kinds of stuff that you could use that for. But I love the Christmas decorations idea, Becky, because that's a worship thing,
Yeah.
That's really
And it
special.
fits your home at the same time, which you needed to do anyway. So
Or your friend's house if you end up with too much stuff. So you just give it away.
decorate the whole neighborhood.
I love the whole idea of photography, on that way. So there you go. It's a great idea. So great idea today. Well, you guys have been wonderful today. I'm going to let's do the wrap up, and then we'll stay on and have a few minutes of the after party. And Johnny, do you want to close up?
Well, I just want to give a hand to Tina. I thought that for her.
Thank you so much for having me. This was
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I thought we were already in the after party.
No, we're gonna go there, but we're still recording right now. We're still recording. Just while it's on.
Party mode. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
party,
Tina, you
party.
did a great job, Tina. What I got to hear, it was wonderful. I love to hear how the brain works and getting God involved in how God just created us to be creative. That was just so wonderful. Thank you. You gave me
Great
some great ideas.
Just FYI, while we're on the recording, is next week's Thanksgiving week, so we are not going to be here at Writers Chat and stuff. We figured people will be busy the week Tuesday, just about getting set up, so that you're off for 1 week, and then we'll be back with the following week, and we'll be back for a couple weeks, and we're going to take a couple weeks off for Christmas. So we'll see everybody in 2 weeks for Writers Chat. And again, thank you, Tina, for being with us today. I'm going to enjoy thank you for being with us live, and enjoy the replay, everybody. And we'll have it up on the page shortly. So I'm going to hit stop recording. Bye, everybody.